My name is Krasimira Tancheva, and I will be the moderator of today's meeting. And we'll start with few housekeeping information. The session will be recorded and live streamed. By attending, you acknowledge that your image and comments may be recorded and rebroadcast. You will be on mute upon entry into the meeting room. Please type your questions or anything you wish to share in the chat box, which you can submit from the start of the session before the Q&A session starts. It will be at the end of the session, and raise hand feature in WebEx if you'd like to ask a question. Without much ado, let me introduce you to the presenter. Bobby Zlatkov, Senior Teacher Adult and Teacher Development. Bobby has been teaching English to learners of all ages for more than 16 years. He holds the internationally acclaimed teaching qualifications of Cambridge University, CELTA and Delta, a diploma in academic management, as well as other qualifications for teaching online and training teachers. Bobby is a teacher trainer delivering seminars and workshops and teaches on CELTA courses and also examines for some of the Cambridge Assessment General and Business English tests. At British Council Bulgaria, apart from being in charge of the adults product, he oversees the CPD program of the teaching center. He does learning and teaching languages and occasionally does translation work as well.
Hi from me. Thank you for the introduction, Krasi, and thanks everyone for joining us. Actually, it is my pleasure to be here in front of you, and I'm really excited about this session. Now, let me start by saying something briefly about the session itself. Here is the subtitle of the session. But do you remember the title? The title sounds a bit abstract, and maybe at the first glance, the things in the title and the subtitle seem somehow unconnected. However, today I'm going to try and kill two birds, or maybe three, with one stone. I'll try to look at some techniques from the perspective of a student and of a teacher. It's a twofold task, a pretty ambitious one, and unfortunately, I may end up falling between two stools. Again, unfortunately, given the nature of the session, I won't be able to offer you a demo of a full-blown communicative lesson, which, as you can imagine, relies on learner participation. You will be able to participate in the session, but the interaction will be rather limited. As Kasi pointed out, you'll be able to use some of the functions that WebEx offers, as well as other ways of sort of getting back to us. Unfortunately, however, you won't be able to talk in pairs or in groups, as it happens in a communicative classroom. And one last thing before we move on to the main part of the presentation, some housekeeping information. As you know, the session will last about 50 minutes. The first 5-10 minutes will be the introduction we are doing now. We are hoping to have at least 5 minutes at the end of the session to answer some questions that you have. So please use the chat function throughout the session, post any questions or comments that you'd like to be answered. Then at the end, we'll try and answer these or as many of these as we can. One last thing, I'm hoping that you'll find some of the content that I'll be sharing useful and interesting, but please don't waste your time and don't try to take notes. That will be unnecessary, that will be redundant, because I'll share the slides with you and the links to some resources I have used in the session. So you'll be able to access these. Also, I'll share my contacts at the end in case you want any further communication. Right, now enough about the session and enough about myself. We're here to talk about languages. Now let's talk about languages. Think about you, think about your experience. What foreign language do you speak? Or what foreign languages do you speak? Can you please use the chat function to answer this one? I'm sure that all of you will say, I speak English, or I know some English, right? What other languages do you speak?
English and Hebrew. Hi, German and some English.
I'm sure you're not muted.
German.
Right, we've got German, We got Hebrew. Okay. Right. Good. Another question. Do you like learning languages? Those of you who got their cameras on, can you please vote using the thumbs up or the thumbs down? As in, I like learning languages. I don't like that, but I have to. Okay. I can vote like this. I adore learning languages. Right, I see we've got some guests from Romania. Good. Right, I said, do you like or maybe don't you like learning languages? Because for some people this is a necessity. We have to learn a foreign language. It's not as easy though. What makes it difficult to learn a foreign language? Again, can you please use the chat and write one thing, maybe one or two words. Fun makes it difficult. How does this happen? Okay. Sounds and meaning. Maybe you mean the sounds as part of the pronunciation. Of course, you know, the way a sound is pronounced, the way a sound is produced in your mouth is different. We don't have the same sound in every language. A and B, sometimes when you mispronounce a word, when you produce a different sound, you may say something completely different. That's a good one. What else did we have, Kasi? Meaning, okay, we have false friends, words that we use in two languages, but they have a different meaning, so that's confusing. Yeah, I agree, lack of practice. Unfortunately, unless we talk in the target language, unless we write in it regularly, it starts to slip and we start to forget things. Right, so all of these things make it challenging, make it difficult to learn a foreign language. So I've already seen that you have some beliefs, you have some ideas about learning a foreign language. And I'm sure that if I ask you, do you know how you should learn a foreign language? You will say, yes, I do. Am I right? Do you know what you want when you go to a lesson? Do you know what you expect when you go to a lesson? Again, this is yes and this is no. Don't be shy. I'm sure that some of you will say, of course I do. I want the teacher to explain this to me, or I want to be able to understand everything, or I want to know how the tenses function in English or in whatever language. In other words, we've got some idea in our head. We've got some preconceptions. That is, some existing shaped ideas in our minds. And this is okay. However, it's always good to question these preconceptions, these existing ideas. And what we're going to do now is look at some myths about language learning. And we'll try to sort of bust some of them. So there'll be some myth busters. All right? Good. I'm going to show you now a statement, an opinion shared by a student. I'll ask you to read it and then say how far you agree with it, rating it from 1 to 5. As in, I disagree, it's not true, or 5, that's absolutely true. Here's the first one. Okay, we've got someone who's sitting on the fence, who sort of agrees, but not really, not 100%. Okay, I'll read the comment for everyone. It says it depends on both parties, as in the teacher and the student. And I think this is true. But the important thing is, it's not up to the teacher only, or it's not up to the student only. So there should be some shared responsibility. In other words, if I asked you the question, who's responsible for the progress you make or you fail to make? Who is this? Okay. So we've agreed that it's not just the teacher, it's a shared responsibility, and motivation is a factor. Moving on to the next one. So again, 1 to 5. Many of us just sign up for a course, attend the classes, do their homework, go prepared for the lessons, and then they expect to make progress. This is something important, and for sure they will make progress. The question is, how realistic will it be for you to make significant, rapid progress only attending the lessons and doing your homework? Right, I can read Anna's comment. She says that her teacher was the best, and as a result she made some good progress. Absolutely, this could happen, this is realistic, but maybe you should always ask yourself, can I be better? Can I do more? Can I outdo myself? Right, it happens slowly for some. Can it happen faster? So maybe if you try and do something outside of the lesson, something extra, however little it is, but regularly, then your progress will accelerate. You'll progress more. So I could share with you my favorite maxim, and it's practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the more things you do in the target language, the more you read in English or listen to music or watch films or talk to people, the better you become. So sky is the limit. The more the better. Now we've got time for another myth. Okay. So again, learning is what happens, what takes place in the classroom and in the preparation for the lessons, as in the home. I can read a comment that the teacher motivated their student to do more. Of course, this is very important. The motivation you gain out of your teacher or out of your classmates, as a result of which you want to read more, you want to practice more, you want to do things outside of the lessons. Right, I agree with Simona's comment that you should take every opportunity you have to communicate, to speak outside of the classroom. No matter what situation, no matter how many mistakes you make, or no matter how difficult it might be. Of course it's difficult. No pain, no gain. And yeah, I think that we all agree that learning can happen and should happen outside of the classroom too. So don't associate your progress or learning a foreign language just with the classes or with the course book. You're not learning the course book, but you should do other things outside of the classroom as well. And I'm not saying these should be grammatical exercises or just reading and translating. Could be anything you like, just you do it in a foreign language or through the foreign language. Okay, so if you think about these three myths, these three opinions we've just discussed, these are things that we may think about at some point in our life, in our career of learners. But the question is, how openly do we discuss them with our teacher? How often does the teacher ask their students such questions? What do you think? Is it something common? From what I see in the responses, not really. And I'm not saying that it has to necessarily be some common practice, but I think it will be good if such things are discussed. if the students are given the opportunity to raise these things, to bring them up with their teacher, or if the teacher just puts them on the table openly. Right, I can read somebody's comment who mentions competition in class. Competition is something good, can be something good, but at the same time can be bad as well, can be demotivating. So if it is healthy competition, that helps. And okay, yes, I agree with another comment. Honesty, openness between the teacher and the students, or between the classmates within a class, is very important. That's true. And also being realistic. But going back to what we discussed a bit earlier, we spoke about the responsibility of for your progress, for your learning. And somebody rightly pointed out that it is a shared responsibility. It's not just the teacher, it's not just the program or the book, it's not just the student. It's a two-sided, at least two-sided process. And right, so we've got something else here. So the learner, you, the person who is learning, who's trying to learn a new language, taking the responsibility for their progress, being motivated, being competitive, as you mentioned. Often we talk about learner autonomy. What does this mean? How do you interpret this phrase? Don't answer, don't post any comments. I've got a little task for you. So I'd like you to go to this address, www.menti.com. It's very easy. You can use your device, your mobile phone, your tablet, your computer. The only thing you need to do is insert this 7-digit code. Once you do this, it will ask you to insert words that you associate with learner autonomy. So each of you can insert up to 3 words, 1, 2, 3, your choice. Words that you associate with learner autonomy. What is it? What does it mean to you? All right, you're getting there. Some more time, and then we'll share the results. Okay, some nice ones. Actually, I was hoping that you'd mention some of these. So let's see. Discipline. Okay, or I might add self-discipline. Self-motivation, very good one. Speak. Okay, maybe speaking up, maybe speaking more, right? Sharing, thinking about your progress, thinking about how to get things done. High, maybe thinking high, aiming high.
Personal responsibility in the chat.
We've got personal responsibility added as well, right? So things revolve around, on the one hand, being disciplined, being responsible, taking the initiative yourself, being proactive, and on the other hand, doing this yourself. I don't mean, how to say, being alone and lonely, but being the driving force behind it. Okay, thanks for this. Now, so far we've spoken about the importance of a shared responsibility between teacher and student. And again, we've just come across some important keywords here, like being disciplined individually, self-motivation. What was the other one? Self-discipline, was it? Personal responsibility, right. So all of these, and what else have we got? Sharing independence. Yeah, doing it independently. And maybe I could say or maybe you'll tell me whether I'm right in saying that this is what learning nowadays, at the beginning of the 21st century, is like. Would you agree with me? So we often hear and talk about learning independently. You mentioned this as well. Studying and learning online. Again, this gives you some sort of freedom and independence. And then here's another thing which I would like to sort of put forward and ask your opinion about. This is learning with a teacher, as opposed to being taught by a teacher. Do you get the difference between the two things? I'll help you a bit. Being taught by a teacher, for me, means something traditional. This is a traditional approach where the teacher is the only source of information. You get all the knowledge that you're expected to gain, to learn from your teacher only. Whereas in the other case, when you learn with a teacher, the role of the teacher is slightly different. So you take your responsibility for your learning, or you share this responsibility with this teacher, but you are proactive, you do things, you are the driving force before you learn, the driving force behind your learning. So the teacher is there for you, the teacher is there to answer your questions, to guide you, to support you, to correct you sometimes maybe, but the teacher does not do the job for you, and the teacher does not give you all the knowledge that you need or that you should recite after that. This is the way I see it. And I claim that this is what learning at the beginning of the 21st century is like. Now, another question for you this time. Do you think that what I've just described and what we've been talking about so far in the session is the same as learning in 2020? How true is this about 2020? Think about this year so far. Think about February to September 2020. Have you been learning independently? Or maybe have your children learned independently or more independently than compared to before? Have you done any courses online? Have your children done courses online? We are doing the session now online. Again, this is the first time we've done the European Day of Languages thing online. And then another thing, do you feel that your teacher or your children's teacher is more like a guiding figure, a facilitator that helps them, that guides them through the learning process? Or do you feel that the teacher is somebody who just gives you all the information that you need and tells you how things are? Do you have any comments in the chat? No, you're silent. Do you think that these things so far this year are just a temporary trend, or is this what learning of the future will look like? Do you think that from now on most of the learning will happen online? Do you think that learning independently will predominate, will be the major trend? Do you think that the teachers we are going to have will sort of facilitate, guide us, but not tell us how things are?
It's not difficult learning in 2020 from February.
Okay, I'll show you now the image of a girl.
It depends on the students.
It says it depends on the students. Okay, I'm glad that you're putting the student as the focal point in the middle. Good. Now, speaking of students and speaking of learning online, here's a sweet young girl who's learning. Apparently, she's writing something. She's maybe doing her homework. Now, do you know who she is? You can't guess her name, can you? Of course not. Right, now, we said that she's a student, or she's in the capacity of a student, as in she's learning something. How do you think she's feeling? Can you use one word to describe her emotion right now at this moment? Okay, I see that you're saying excited, right? Judging by the smile on her face, maybe happy. She doesn't seem scared or nervous. Curious, I like this one. Curiosity should be fostered. Students, especially children, should be encouraged to ask questions and to want to learn more. Right? She's feeling awesome, I agree. Okay, another question. How is she learning? How? In what way? Active. She's active, okay. Classic way. You mean that she's using a pen and paper, right? She's practicing good. Look at the picture carefully. Is there anyone else around her? Is this a classroom? Doesn't look like a classroom. Maybe she's learning one-to-one. Okay. Are there classmates around her? Oh, it looks like a game, somebody's saying, a child game. Okay, could be. She's not alone, but we don't see anyone in the picture, do we? Alright, now I'll tell you something. This is little Margie. Her name is Margie, and I'll show you now a short text about her. Spend a minute or two reading the text. Right. Now, what thoughts came to your mind when you were reading this passage? What did you think of? Can you share in the chat, please? No thoughts? Maybe this means that as a result of reading this piece of text, your mind went blank?
I don't believe she's so.
Maybe you think that her happy face in the description is some sort of oxymoron. Okay.
Then, I believe that she's not help her with the environment.
Right, so some comments about the teacher, the real teacher, as in the teacher in blood and flesh being a necessity, very important factor. The role of the parent, the role of the mother who makes the safe environment, the human factor, very good. Another question, do you think this description of, let's say, of a learning situation is a realistic description? Is it a description of learning in the future, or maybe learning in the present? No, you're saying no? Anyone else? Realistic versus science fiction? Okay, you're hoping this is something temporary, happening only right now, only in 2020, and hoping that it will finish soon? Now, before we move on and talk a bit more about this kind of learning, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about learning happening in this sort of remote, distant, impersonal way? Right, so some of you don't really approve of it. You think that children need diversity, variety, moving around, something physical. Okay, now I'll let you reflect on this a bit more, but let's first look at where this text comes from. Actually, this is an extract, a part from a book, which was written by the American writer Isaac Asimov in 1951, the middle of the previous century. And we could say that learning online looked like a thing of the future a few years ago. This was the case. It looked like something extremely futuristic and unbelievable, even months ago, not years ago. However, nowadays, this is the most popular mode of learning. Most of the learning right now is happening online or in a blended mode. Can we say that the current situation shows what learning in the future will be like? Maybe some of you can unmute their mics and share their opinions. Perhaps you will help me with this.
This is something that can do. I can raise hand.
Okay, well, if you want, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, and then share your opinion.
Hopefully not learn. Distance learning is a part of education. Chat. Then
Everyone is shy to speak. Okay, maybe again we can resort to yes, we agree, we like it, or no, we don't agree, we don't like it. And I'll repeat the question. So, can we say that the current situation shows what learning in the future will be like? Do you think that we'll continue learning in this way, in this sort of impersonal distance way? Hopefully not. Okay.
no.
You prefer personal contact? Okay, we're people after all, I think we all do. Okay. So again, we can leave this open. Of course, you can think about it and reflect on it. Again, I'd like to remind you that this is part of a book written in 1951, nearly 70 years ago. And think about how topical it sounds nowadays, fortunately or unfortunately. And think about how quickly we adapted to this new way of learning and gaining information and communicating with each other. Is this something bad? Or maybe is it something good for us? I'm leaving these questions, I'm leaving this discussion open. And I think that here is the time for me to remind you of the title of the session. So we spoke briefly about the subtitle. Now here's the title itself. I called it In the Flying Classroom. And we have spoken about a story by Isaac Asimov. What did I call the session In the Flying Classroom? What did I mean by this? We can hear someone, maybe, who wants to answer? How do you understand the flying classroom?
Challenge.
Okay. Perhaps maybe you can help me with
We
comments?
didn't have any choices. It's about online teaching.
Okay, yeah. It was sort of imposed by the situation. We didn't choose it. It happened to us. Yeah, I agree. Again, any link with the flying classroom? Is it a classroom that's got wings and flies? Or maybe something else? Okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell just a possible answer, it's not the answer. Look at these three images and think about the title, The Flying Classroom. Well, actually this comes from another book called The Flying Classroom by Erich Kästner. And while that book has nothing to do with learning online, or the classroom of the future, it does describe the experiences of students in an unusual classroom. But what is the connection with my talk? Now look at these images to help you. Can you find any link, any connection between our talk about learning foreign languages nowadays and the flying classroom, the unusual classroom? Again, you can use the chat, or you can share your opinion by shouting it out using your mic. Okay, I see a comment, learning in front of a laptop. Yeah.
Maybe better. Can she has an easy?
Okay.
I can invite Petya if she'd like to share with us her opinion. She has a muted her mic.
Again, you've got shy people. Well, the flying classroom, I think it's about learning of the future. It's about studying online. It's about the current situation where everything's up in the air, sort of uncertain, sort of vague, sort of unfamiliar. But it's also about the wings that knowledge and learning give us. Children, adults, anyone who learns, anyone who finds out new facts and enriches themselves, their personality, their wings grow bigger and bigger, and they can fly higher and higher. And you know, sky is the limit. Actually, this was my association with the flying classroom. It's called different dimensions. Okay, anyone who wants to add something, anything? Any reflections on the title, on the flying classroom?
There are a few comments.
Let's hear them.
Art, exactly. And there is somebody who probably typed the original title of this book.
In German.
In German.
Actually, my German is a bit rusty, so I won't risk reading the title in German, but it's a book which was originally written in German, and I think that the author is Austrian, if I'm not mistaken. So absolutely. Okay. Now, in the last part of the session, I'd like to draw your attention to the session abstract. And this is something which I wrote a while ago when the situation was slightly different. And basically, in the session abstract, I promised that we would answer these 3 questions together. At the top of the slide, you see the subtitle of the presentation, which sounds a bit pompous. Now let's look at the questions themselves. Okay, I see an answer in response to the first question. To not discourage the student and to help them not feel scared. Right. Also, unfortunately, we weren't able to demonstrate this in this session, but if some of you had had the opportunity to discuss or to answer some of the questions and had made mistakes, I wouldn't have interrupted and corrected them. As Simone pointed out, it's really important for the students to say things, to share their opinions in a way which is not threatening, to feel free. As long as their classmates and the teacher can understand them, communication can happen, and this is the most important thing. From then on, there is time when the teacher can help you focus on the accuracy, on the correctness of the language you produce. But by no means does the teacher stop or interrupt the student in order to correct them. So that's why sometimes when you're having a discussion, or let's say halfway through the lesson, you say, okay, well, the teacher hasn't corrected me. It doesn't mean that your teacher wasn't listening to you. It just means that you are focusing on being confident, on speaking freely, or on gaining practice speaking, as opposed to on accuracy. Then another one. Yeah, I see a comment that maybe they have a good point in mind, they have a good point to make, but they can't speak correctly. This could be the case. It could be the case in your language. I mean, when you're thinking about things, when you're still thinking about what you want to say, Sometimes it's difficult to think at the same time about how to formulate your thought, how to formulate your sentence. And this could happen, once again, I'll say it in your language. You shouldn't be afraid to just say something, then repeat and correct yourself, or maybe to say it and make a mistake. And the most important thing is to be understood. Then another one. Have you wondered how you make progress with your speaking when you talk to your classmates in pairs, in groups, but not only to the teacher? Well, again, we couldn't demonstrate this in the session because it's not a live lesson, it's not a real lesson. But if we had had this opportunity, I would have asked you to discuss things amongst each other in pairs or in groups. And this is what most teachers nowadays do. They get their students to talk about things in the class, and they observe them, they monitor them. And the idea is that the students, as Simona points out, students gain more practice. And we said earlier, practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the better you become. And I'd like us to look back at the text about Margie, the little girl. Well, if you think about this text, I said it comes from a book, doesn't it? And the book it comes from is something authentic. I haven't adapted this piece of text. I haven't made the words any simpler or the sentences any shorter. It's authentic literature. And you know, in any language, literature is not easy to read and understand. However, I think you were able to read and understand the text, weren't you? And this is what many teachers do in their lessons. We use authentic materials, texts, music, films, clips, in order to help our students feel more confident and understand better the real-life language, because communication is about real-life language. It's not about artificial text being created for a course book. Now, if we take a closer look at this text, I have identified some words which are sort of, let's say, special. Look at the words in bold. We've got mechanical, arithmetic, addition, and float. Do you know these words? Maybe you do. Or maybe you do because they're the same in your language, or they're the same in other languages you know, as in their international words. So my point is, whenever you read a piece of text which is not adapted, which is authentic, it's a good idea to think about the words that you already know, or the words that you can guess because they are similar in your language or they're international words. And this will help you. Even if you don't know the word addition, for sure you know the word add. And from add, you can guess the meaning of the noun of addition. So that's the easy bit. But if you look at the words which are underlined, I'm not sure whether you can see this clearly, we've got except, lit up, and fractions. Well, these are unfamiliar words for sure. And, okay, you can choose and worry about them. You might say, right, I don't understand this word, I don't know it, I don't understand the text. But think about it. Were you able to understand this piece of text when I showed it to you? I think you did. You answered my question quite successfully. So you didn't need to worry about these words. And also, see how few the unfamiliar words could be in an extract. And again, looking forward to the session aims, we said that teachers nowadays often use authentic materials and often rely on the students to use some strategies, learning strategies, to cope with the task. And this again links to what we spoke about earlier, learner autonomy. So when you read a book at home, don't run to the dictionary, just read, enjoy the piece of reading. Try to use the words which you already know, or which are international words, or whose meaning you can guess. Don't worry too much about unfamiliar words. And I think that this is more or less everything we've had time for. Again, if I show you the session extract, the session excerpt, you'll see that there are questions that remained unanswered. This was just a tiny bit of the stuff have shared with you. But I'm hoping that there will be other sessions and other demo lessons that you'll participate in. Now, I'd like to open the floor to anyone who'd like to share something or ask a question right now that they want answered. Okay, you can use the chat or you can unmute your mic and speak up.
Planning for the next session.
Well, there's a question about the next session. This could either mean so that I don't waste my time and don't join it, or because I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that it's the second. Well, the European Day of Languages happens once a year, every year in September. However, we do have other events and other initiatives that the British Council participates in. So you can follow our website and the different events promoted there. You can read information about these. I hope you found it interesting. Thanks for your participation and for being active. And if there are no other questions, I'd like to end by showing you the references, the links, and my email address. So as I said, you will receive these, you'll receive the presentation. Some of the materials I used for the preparation of this session come from our website for teachers, teachingenglish.org.uk. Some information from Wikipedia, of course. The images come from these two sources. And you can reach me for any comments, questions, or anything you'd like to share or find out about at this email address. Thank you for your time. Thank you for following the session. It was my pleasure, and I wish you good luck with studying and learning a foreign language.
Thank you all.